We have the ability to affect so much change around this country. If we would just realize there are ways to go about it without anger, violence, weapons, or being seen as the enemy, so to speak. And in today's video, I would like to share a couple of those ideas that people like Gretchen Whitmer won't have an answer for. There will be absolutely no way a governor could stop these things if people would just use their head and get creative. This is one of them. I'm sure a lot of people are like, wait a minute, that's just a football on a beach, McKee. Yeah, it's just a football on a beach. But what would happen if 10, 12, 15, maybe more guys all got together and decided they wanted to go play a pickup game of football on the beach? And then they all invited their girlfriends, and their girlfriends all invited at least one friend. You'd have quite a group of people. Now, it would be incredibly difficult for one or two or even four police officers to stop that game. They could start arresting people, but if they did, you would have them in a trap. And it's a trap that they wouldn't see coming. And this is where it's going to get a little complicated. I need folks to stick with me on this, because the police aren't the enemy. All the police are is a tool in the toolbox of a governor like Gretchen Whitmer. She's using them like a hammer. Well, a hammer is good for one thing: hammering a nail. What you need to do is make yourself look like a sheet metal screw. A hammer is useless, and that's an analogy. Let me explain what I mean. Okay, who remembers the story of the woman who went to the playground? She staged this thing. She went with her kids in Idaho. They arrested her. Everybody videotaped it because all they wanted to do was make the police look bad when the police were just enforcing a governor's order. Pardon me. If they really wanted to make the governor's order look dumb, all they had to do is, instead of one woman and her two kids, they had to get a whole bunch of guys out there just playing catch. 15 or 20 of them. Because there's a problem with enforcing this governor's or any governor's stay-at-home order or order to not be in public. Laws cannot be enforced arbitrarily. And that's important to remember. Laws cannot be enforced arbitrarily. We have equal protection, meaning that if it gets enforced with one, it needs to be enforced with all. Now tell me, how are 2 or 3 or 4 or 6 or 7 police officers going to arrest 10 or 15 or 20 people out running around playing catch? Especially if it's high school kids. They'll never catch them. They'll never catch them. It'll be a game of tag. The ones that sit still, yeah, they'll get them. But if nobody sits still and everybody's running around having a good time, as a group standing back, it looks like the park is open, right? The police can't do anything about it. Now, why is that important? I'm sure a lot of people are already typing, well, they'll just bring more and more and more and more cops. There's a problem. How many parks are there? You see, laws and executive orders like this, on their face, are unconstitutional, not just because they violate the Constitution. They couldn't be codified if they wanted to, because it's an unenforceable, arbitrary law saying that you just can't go to the park. They don't have literally enough security forces to enforce said law, makes the law unconstitutional, would never hold up in court. I'd like to share a quick story about this that maybe might illuminate what I'm saying. Back in high school, I had a government class. And right behind me sat a girl that never raised her hand. Ever. Never answered a question. We had one of those teachers that was really proactive and liked to challenge us on things. And he posed this question. He said, when would it be a violation of your constitutional rights if, and this was a class of 16 and 17-year-olds, if you were drinking at a party underage and the police came and arrested you, when would that be a violation of your civil rights? And a few of us tried to somehow create some convoluted situation, and it wasn't the answer. It was never the right answer. This girl behind me raised her hand, and she nailed it. She absolutely nailed it. She said this: if there were other minors at the party drinking and nobody arrested them, if they singled you out and said, you did this one wrong thing, but there were a whole bunch of other people doing same said wrong thing and they ignored them, or they didn't even attempt to, that's a violation. You cannot enforce laws arbitrarily. This is how we're going to get them. Now, this is equal protection. Right here, I just wanted to show this real quick. Statutes that have a rational basis for discrimination must be supported by a legitimate government interest. That'll never be able to be proven. Ever. Now, riddle me this. Follow the logic here. This is going to get a little bit kind of down the rabbit hole. You get arrested, let's say, for being in a park. And you have your day in court. You could challenge the officer that arrested you and say, that day when you left for your shift, did you arrest everyone you saw in public? Every opportunity that you saw to question someone or stop someone, did you arrest them and pull the dash cam and body footage for the previous week and see if there was any opportunity that police officer had to arrest someone where they didn't? So then the police officer would have a couple of responses. He could either say, I used my professional judgment, or I used my personal judgment. Either way, you have him. If he says, I used my professional judgment and thought that arresting you was more important than arresting this other person, the city is then liable, or the county or the state, whoever is employing that police officer. But they are going to say, hold on, police officer, wait a minute, back up. And they're going to go to some dusty file drawer somewhere and pull out a piece of paper that I'm sure has that police officer's signature on it, where he said, based on some training having been received, that he would not arbitrarily enforce laws based on his just perception of things. That there was no professional training that said, enforce laws arbitrarily and take the lowest hanging fruit. Meaning that if a woman is sitting in the park with her kid and she's violating the law, and there's 10 guys over there and they're running around playing football, also violating the law, and the cop decides, I'm going to take low hanging fruit and just arrests the woman, that's a problem. If he says, I used my personal judgment, then it is civil lawsuit city. You'll take his home, you'll take his pension, he will be homeless. Now, a lot of you are probably clapping, yeah, that's what we need to do. No, that's not. You need to take it one step further. You need to convince the police officers. You need to go out right now and say, look, what the governor is doing to you is putting you in a position where the city is either going to throw you under the bus or we're going to take every dime you have. If you follow these unconstitutional orders, if you follow these illegal orders, these mandates from these governors, you are putting your life and your, not your physical life, but your financial life at risk. and your job at risk and your career at risk if you do this. Because once this makes its way into the courts, and it will, the city is going to throw you under the bus. And if you make some allegation that it was your personal judgment that said, we're going to arrest these people over here, but not those people over there, even though they're both violating the law, you are screwed. So why don't you join us instead? Why don't you join us instead? This has been the hallmark of every major rebellion that I can show in history. Every time a government has gotten too big for its britches, every time someone has got it in their head that they're a governor or a president or whatever, and that they can just go into their office, pull out a piece of paper, and start writing law, the first and most effective way is to start to, quote unquote, turn the hammers in their toolboxes, so to speak. If they start seeing police forces, meaning guys walking into offices and handing down their gun and their badge and saying, you know what, I didn't sign up to work for a tyrant. I didn't sign up to work for someone, a king or a queen. I'm gone. And if they see that start happening, 10, 12, 15% of forces are walking off the job because of these illegal orders, that will send a chill into Washington and into state houses around this country that will be undeniable. Because now they're -1, we're +1. And this is all it takes, guys. Get a group together. Now this shows, don't take your minor kids to do this. This is a bad picture for this. Here we go. Tom Brady playing catch with himself. Get a group of guys together. Get a whole bunch of them. As many as you can, get together. And spouses. And get as many footballs, baseballs, frisbees, whatever you want. And overrun these parks. Playing catch. Now here it shows, the police could say, well, they're not, too close. They're more than 6 feet. But what if you go to the beach and you get a football game going? Then what? Are they really going to try to step into the middle of a football game? Now, we're at a stage now where a lot of these are reopening, but people in California, and as the summer months come, people in Michigan, people in other places that are along the Great Lakes up there that have access to an environment like this, you don't need anger, you don't need weapons, you don't need guns, you don't need anything like that. All you need is a large enough group of people willing to go out and have a good time. And call their bluff. Call their bluff. If they start arresting 1 or 2 or 3, you've got them. You absolutely have them. Unless they're going to arrest all 100 of you or 150 of you, which is for most forces beyond their ability to do, all you'll have to do is go, well, what about the park 3 miles away? Were there people there? Did you arrest them? They'll come back with, we just didn't have enough security forces. That's not our problem. Did you enforce the law in a non-arbitrary manner, yes or no? And all it has to do is get before a judge. But it shouldn't even have to go this far. Talk to these people. Talk to these guys that are just a tool for these governors and say, look, there's no win for you in this. You are never going to get away with it. You will lose in a civil suit. We will get the city. We will get somebody for this. And it will just be an untenable situation. It'll cost you your job. And once we have your face plastered all over the media, Everybody's going to know who you are. Everybody's going to know where you live. Everybody's going to know where your family lives. Over this, over a bunch of people getting together and tossing the football around at the beach, are you willing to throw your complete and not physical life away, your figurative life away over this? Most cops, most are good, decent people that have the ability to see and understand logic. This is all you need. Get together, get some exercise, pick up football game, frisbee, game of tag, Red Rover, who cares? I mean, as long as it's a bunch of groups of people and you can make the point. They cannot enforce it arbitrarily. And arbitrarily means they arrest everyone or they arrest no one. If not, they're toast. Like, share, subscribe.